Hello and welcome to ANC Decides, the show that gives you up-to-the-minute reports, commentary and analysis building up to the ANC's December elective conference. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabalani. Here's today's top stories. Free State Chair Ace Magashule proposes a compromise deal between succession frontrunners Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa. Zweli Mkhize calls end to slate politics. Free State ANC elects new leadership despite Thabo Manyoni's faction staying away from the elective conference. Dissidents allege unresolved branch disputes. And public spat continues over KZN chairperson Sihle Zikalala's outburst against Ramaphosa. Party credentials of the ANC Youth League structure that hit back at Zikalala are called into question. The battle lines are drawn in the hotly contested ANC succession, and plans are afoot to prevent a bruising battle between the two main contenders before it's too late. ANC Free State chairperson Ace Magashule and Treasurer General Zweli Mkhize are proposing a compromise deal. Magashule proposes that front-runners Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as well as Cyril Ramaphosa negotiate a compromise before voters elect a new ANC president. Mkhize says the ANC needs to find a way to eradicate slate politics. The call comes amid numbers showing that the race is too close to call. Meanwhile, rival camps are cautious to either admit defeat or claim victory prematurely. The ANC proposal for consensus is the most telling sign of a close contest where there is no clear winner. The latest development raises several questions about each camp seeking to strike a deal before it's too late.
Unity is sacrosanct. I am meeting everybody, comrades. Here we're not CR. Luena NDZ. You belong to this province called Free State. This is a Free State, the foundation of unity. This is where the ANC was born. Persuade one another and find a common position. There are people who make as if we, branches of the ANC, nationally, and especially in this province, we don't like Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa. They forget, deliberately so, that it is us, Free State, Mpumalanga, KZN, and Northwest, who propelled in 2012, when Kosatu and Party was saying, Cyril Ramaphosa is part of monopoly capital. And we have reminded them in the National Executive Committee, it's us. And it's us who went to Comrade Cyril 30 minutes before elections. It was us who went to Comrade Cyril and said, we want you as deputy president. Even in the document of the ANC as we go to national conference, we are going to talk about monopoly capital versus white monopoly capital.
Unity is a rock upon which the African National Congress is founded. It is supposed to unite all the people of South Africa. At that conference, we must make sure that we do not encourage slave politics, but we must look at our leaders and make sure that we get the best of what the African National Congress can offer.
I think what happens in December, for me, it would just be a democratic process of electing the leadership of the ANC, a team that must look after the ANC and implement its policies for the next 5 years. Beyond that, the people who would have won must work with the people who did not win.
We must accept the decision of the majority of the delegates of the conference. We must accept, Nami, as I am prepared and willing to accept the decision of the majority of the delegates at the conference. If I do not succeed in the elections, I will humble myself. I will, with great humility, accept the results and the leadership that will come from the election that will have happened.
The essence of the meeting with the 7 hopefuls and the provincial chairpersons and secretaries was to say, everybody who wants to be nominated must equally prepare himself or herself for not being nominated. Everybody nominated must prepare himself or herself for winning after nomination and contest, and also prepare and accept that if I don't succeed, I will accept the outcome.
Now today in studio, we're joined by political analyst Professor Sipho Siep, and via Skype we're joined by Professor Begim Ngomezulu. Panel, welcome to the both of you. It's down to the wire, Professor, 5 days to go. Interesting, it seems that the unity call is welcomed across the board if we had to go by their public statements. But if we had to start with Ace Magashule's address, very interesting. He goes on to say that the two need to find some common position. The two front runners must find a common position before they head to the elective conference. Is this a genuine call for unity, or it's perhaps concession on the team of NDZ to say we're conceding defeat at this point? What is your take?
Well, I think the calls and the efforts are to be welcomed, because if you look at where the ANC right now, where it is right now, you can see that the campaign elsewhere had become so personal. The provinces are so divided. It's one thing to have a person winning by a small margin in a province. But when you look at the province, you can see that they've taken a position. And I say the position is that of acceptance and rejection, because the numbers are so vast. You get somebody getting 400 nominations and another one getting 2 or 4. And you see that they're playing itself elsewhere. So effectively, the leadership of the ANC can see that if this is not managed, come the conference, once it's gone, the notion of unity might be a pipe dream. So I think it is something positive. But most importantly, what makes it difficult, what makes unity difficult even after, are a number of things. First, if you're going to run, if one of you runs a negative and dirty campaign, dirty campaigns often offend people. And we've seen some of the candidates adopting that. And when you do that, even the people who may have wanted to support you, they actually feel betrayed and disappointed in you. And it makes it very difficult to unite. And the second thing that the ANC must also address, it's also, and which makes it also difficult for unity, you have external forces that had actually encroached into the ANC. If you look at the position of business, they are very much inside the ANC and telling the ANC that we do not want this person. And if you vote for this person, then South Africa would be almost close to Armageddon. So you have to
interject and just get the view of Professor Ngomezulu quickly. Professor, your take, rebuilding the ANC post-Nasrec, that's the biggest question now. It seems divisions are widening from where I'm seated at the very least, because if we had to go by that outburst by Sihle Zikalala, it's clear that post-Nasrec, we don't see at least Sihle and Ramaphosa meeting each other halfway.
Yeah, I must say, Pundo, it is concerning, but at the same time, it is understandable, because there is a lot at stake. There's been a lot of time and resources that have been put into these campaigns, and everyone is gearing up to win the contest. Of course, from a realistic point of view, not everyone will win. There will be a winner and there will be a loser. But the only thing that is worrying is when leaders then start, say, derailing from the issues on the table and then go into personality politics. That one is more dangerous, because right now almost all the leaders of the ANC are talking about unity. The only difference is the modus operandi that they are putting on the table. In other words, they are not happen. Like the clip that you just played, where Ace Magashule at this 11th hour is then coming up with a suggestion as to how the two leaders can move forward. But then one would say the damage has already been done because slate politics has in fact characterized the campaigns up to this far. But the onus is on the ANC, not just the ANC leadership, but the membership and the delegates as well, to make sure that at least the conference goes ahead without any glitches, so that at least South Africa can benefit from this whole thing. Because in the event that this conference does not go well, then obviously South Africa will be on the receiving end. So it's critical that unity becomes the key factor.
No, many are calling for that unity. Now, a bit earlier on, we did calculations of the likely outcomes of the national conference. Here's how the ANC numbers look right now. And now to take you through our latest calculations in this presidential race. Now, starting off with the nominations that we know as they stand now. We've got CR17 standing on 1,860, and then we have NDZ standing on 1,330. Now, together, they account for 3,190 nominations. And then we move on to the other candidates that were in the running. Mkhize, he's 45 nominations. If we had to perhaps play devil's advocate here, we'll throw that 45 with the Ramaphosa team, and that brings him up to 1,905. Obviously, NDZ still remaining at 1,330. And then we go on to Lindiwe Sisulu. Her one nomination that she got, we throw it with Ramaphosa, moving him to 1,906. And then we move on to Matthews Posa. He's got his 5. If we had to play devil's advocate again in this respect, we'd say his 5 would possibly go to CR17, taking him to 1,911. Now we go to the unity vote, the one that everybody has been talking about. We have those 233 unaccounted for nominations at this point. If we had to play devil's advocate in this respect, we say 70% could possibly go to NDZ. Now, 70% would then be 156 going to her, moving her to 1,486. And then we gave CR17 67 of those nominations, moving him to 1,978, still leading at that point. And then we move on to the abstentions. The abstentions, we had 53. We split that one equally, giving them 26-26. Obviously, that comes to 52, but we cannot have half a nomination, so bear with us there on those mathematics. But we give them 26-26 each, moving CR17 to 2004 rather, and then we move NDZ to 1,512. Still, CR17 is in the lead if we split that evenly. And then now we move on to the structures. We've got the ANC Women's League. We all know that they've got 60 votes. Now, of those 60, if we had to split it 80-20, we would say 80 of the Women's League going to NDZ, bringing her to 1,560, given everything that has been stated in the public arena pertaining to the Women's League, saying they're supporting her. So we'd give her that 80, bringing her to that 1,560. And then CR17, we give him 12 of those, taking him to 2,016, still in the lead with that 20%. And then we move on to the ANC Youth League, also very vocal. They've been in support of NDZ. Now, again, we split it 80-20. Giving her 80%, 48 of those votes takes her to 1,608. And then the 12 that we give to CR17 takes him to 2,028. And then we move to the third structure, the Veterans League. The Veterans League, we've also heard them through public statements. They seem to be in support of CR17, but again, it's still a guessing game here. So we give him 80 in this respect, and then we give her 20. 48 of the Veterans League going to him takes him to 2,076, and it takes NDZ to 1,620 because we've given her the 12 there. And then we move on to the NEC. At this point, many would be sure in saying that most of the NEC at this point would be sympathizers of NDZ, we'd like to believe, because they come from the NEC, which was put together by President Jacob Zuma. We'd say that there we give her 63 of those votes, putting her at 1,683, and then we perhaps give CR17 23 of those votes, putting him at 2,099. Still in this respect, he's in the lead there, as you see, 2,099. And then we move on to the PECs. We know that the PECs each have 27 votes, and we know that 5 of those PECs have voted for, or rather nominated CR17, and 4 having nominated NDZ. So how it looks is that he gets 135 of those votes, taking him to 2,234, and then she gets 108 of those votes, taking her to 1,791. As it stands there, still CR17 seems to be comfortably in the lead in the 2000s, while she's still at 1.7. And then we move to the interesting one, the swing votes, because you'd remember that we have 5,240 voting delegates. Now, 90% of those will be the branches, coming from the branches, bringing that number to 4,731. So we then have that difference, because again, we've spoken about the numerical equation not being so accurate because of the number of delegates that some of the branches will be sending. So we have that swing vote, the 1,106, and that's assuming that perhaps we'll see 100 delegates not voting. Now, with that said, we could see, or at least for CR17 to win, he needs at least 30% of those swing votes, taking him to 2,566. Those swing votes would be 332. Now for CR17, for NDZ to win, she needs at least more than 70% of those swing votes. A tall ask, by the way. But if we had to look at it, if she got that 70, she would be standing at 2,565. You see there as it stands, exactly at 70% of the swing vote, she moves to 2,565. And Cyril Ramaphosa stands at 2,566, still in the lead by 1. But now if she were just to go over the 70%, then she could win. So this is what it looks like now. And the debate is now on. We discussed these figures tonight. And that's my mathematics. Professor, I'm open to be persuaded. So go, dig at me at this point. What do you make of my numbers? If we just had to start with the Zweli Mkhize one. If we talk about the candidates, that we know who the front runners are, if those other candidates throw their lot with one of them. I was generous. I said 45 of the nominations from Zweli Mkhize could possibly go to CR17. Your take? I know they met with the NDZ camp, but what's your take on my 45 going to CR17?
Yeah, I think it's a good mathematical speculation. And but what it comes down to is, even with the generosity, that if you look at the swing votes, if you were to be correct on 70%, then you have a very close contest. And I think it is that closeness that makes all the leaders to say, let's, at least many other leaders other than the people who are contesting, to say, let's have a discussion and come up with what was suggested by President Zuma, to say, in the ANC, I know what it means when you have a winner takes all, that it is bad for the organization. And people are beginning to see that, so hence they are calling for that. So that I think is positive. But I'm not so sure that the swing votes are that many. I mean, I need to be convinced that it will be that 70%. But I think there's also a possibility where Zweli Mkhize might find common cause with KZN's posture. Because remember, Zweli Mkhize was on a ticket with Cyril. And that was a ticket that was there for some time until he was rejected. So even as a politician, he also has to understand that...
Although the Eastern Cape did nominate him, but it's just
the Eastern Cape. But remember,
yeah,
he was always Cyril's deputy for a very long time, until the Cyril's camp began to say, we want a woman, because simply having 2 men is not going to work. So he was actually pushed out of that slate. So the question is, would he choose to align himself with the possibility of unity, especially when that unity comes from a number of provinces? And these are big provinces. If you're talking about Mpumalanga, you're talking about KZN, you're talking about the Free State, you're talking about Northwest, you would also say that, look, for the sake of unity, I might actually try to push those who are triumphalist around the thinking that they are going that in a particular route. But also, as I say, the problem here, Zweli must also be thinking about what's in the interest of the ANC, not what's in the interest of external forces that have historically been hostile to the ANC.
No, it's honestly an interesting one. But Professor Mgomezulu, your take that if we're talking here about just the closeness of this race, that for many, if perhaps NDZ were to go on to win, we cannot disregard the 5 provinces that endorsed Ramaphosa, that if they were now to split, those 5 provinces, having ANC supporters leaving the ANC in 5 provinces, would cripple. It would be damaging to the ANC. So do you also perhaps agree with a call for unity at this point, that somehow they need to meet each other halfway?
Yeah, no, there is no harm in doing that. But to be realistic, in fact, one is that these numbers are in a way deceptive, and it would be presumptuous to assume that the 45, for example, that are behind Zweli Mkhize are indeed in his bag. Because in the event that the race is between NDZ and CR17, chances are those who are supporting either Zweli Mkhize or any other person for that matter will then decide whether they go with Cyril Ramaphosa or they go with the NDZ. So basically, there is very little that we can read from these numbers, correct as they might be, but I don't think that we can read too much into them, for the simple reason that lobbying is underway as we are talking right now, and more lobbying will be continuing until the election time comes. So basically, as much as at the moment it appears as if CR17 is in the lead, he himself is not sure that all the numbers are indeed in his bag. The same applies to Nkosi Dlamini Zuma. So then when crunch time comes, then the delegates will then have to sit down and ask themselves the question, who will be working in the best interest of the party? And then the slate politics that we have had up to so far will play itself out. For example, those who are not happy about a white monopoly capital might then say, in the event that Cyril Ramaphosa seems to be neck and neck with NDZ, they would rather go with NDZ for the simple reason that she seems to be glued into ANC policies and she's not introducing anything new. But then those who are supporting Cyril Ramaphosa and have issues with NDZ, not because she has done anything wrong, but because of her association with the president, then they might take their vote to CR17. So basically, it's a guessing game until the very last minute. So it's still a long way to go.
No, we certainly have been playing this guessing game and somewhere in there putting the mathematics. But Professor Siepe, if we had to talk about these final days, they seem to be critical. We've seen both these front runners having interviews. We saw the Cyril Ramaphosa, or at least listened to the Cyril Ramaphosa interview now at 7:02, and it seems to have caused some sort of a problem amongst ANC members. They're divided at this point. Do you foresee this going positively for him or somehow impacting his campaign or candidacy negatively?
Well, first of all, Cyril was waylaid by 7:02. The question was going to come. And you would have expected somebody who is a lawyer, who understands the law, and who understands the outcome of the court, would have defended the court because he was not there. So at least the worst you could have said is that I'm not in a position to judge because I was not there, but I respect the court.
But Professor, that kind of a question, perhaps not that I believe he said something that was right or incorrect, put that aside. The question itself, the relevance to the race at this point, I couldn't necessarily put the link because this question of do you believe Kwesi was asked to each and every candidate. But again, I would have thought that if asked, I would say, can you place me there at the time? I cannot say I believe this one or the other because I maybe haven't met Kwesi. Perhaps you say that I looked her in the eyes and I knew whether she was telling the truth. I didn't understand the question and found it to be unfair on all the candidates. That why must they get into that space at that time?
Well, I think the question begins to test the political maturity and the issue of integrity of the person. If you want to play to the gallery that is before you, you look at which way the wind is blowing and you jump. And Cyril has actually shown that he is capable of undermining his own training as a lawyer to please the audience. And this is, anyway, the audience that normally does not even vote for the ANC. This is an audience that is hostile to the ANC. So what he should have done, he undermined his professional integrity, but also really common sense that I do not know.
But what about the violence against women? Because we've got to address that part. Perhaps it could have been phrased in that way where they talked about his view on violence against women and children, perhaps, and how he would go on to champion this agenda to arrest the scourge.
Yeah, but look at how his response to it. It has actually brought his own behavior to light, because there are many people who are now willing to come out to say you are
no,
actually
we'll certainly
women basher.
revisit that one. Let's just quickly step to the Free State. Now, the Free State ANC Provincial Conference is proceeding against the backdrop of the court challenge. Dissidents aim to challenge the conference, where Provincial Chairperson Ace Magashule is expected to be re-elected unopposed. Magashule's rival, Thabo Manyoni, and his supporters are absent from the Provincial Elective Conference. The disgruntled members claim 98 branch disputes were unresolved before the sitting. However, the provincial leadership says the court-mandated 29 branch general meetings had been convened accordingly. Magashule had also extended an olive branch to the aggrieved members. The snub then raises several questions about the dissidents' attempts to block Magashule's re-election.
We respect the institutions of democracy. You do know by now that there is a judgment against us. We are indeed adhering to the court judgment, and we are reconvening those 29 branches, and we have adhered to that 29 branches, and that's why provincial conference is proceeding. After officials processes has been done, if there is a contest, I'm sure Aisa will also pronounce that we are going for a secret ballot, or whichever way they determine. If there's no contest, I'm sure the process will unfold as such.
They took us to court. The court said we must rerun 29 branches. We have complied with the court order. We are rerun at the 29 branches. So we have done what the court wanted us to do.
Now, Professor Mgumezulu, if you just had to be brief, 30 seconds, that's all the time we've got. Your closing remarks, Free State there.
No, I think that the Free State has done what was supposed to be done. We just have to be cool-headed and then think about the party, think about the country, and forget about personal interests. Because as long as Free State has complied with the court order, I don't think there is anything sinister about them having the conference.
No, certainly. It seems the only way for this conference to go on smoothly and for perhaps the ANC to remain in power, I think the only one is just unity. But that's it from us. Until next time.